I never played Final Fantasy VII. Instead, I played Crisis Core. It was a PSP game on a PlayStation Portable. While I wish Zack Fair was a more interesting build-around commander, Sephiroth will always be there as the antagonist we all know and love, which means it's no surprise he's the most built-around commander in the Final Fantasy Magic set. So here's what makes Sephiroth so good. He's an Aristocrats commander, meaning you want to sacrifice cards to trigger abilities like Sephiroth's to deal damage whenever he sees stuff die. This isn't inherently overpowered or stronger than other strategies, but in an Aristocrats deck, there are generally 3 parts to its engine: creatures to sacrifice, stuff to sacrifice them with, and a Blood Artist ability like the bottom of the Sephiroth card. If you activate this ability enough times in one turn, Sephiroth flips to create a Blood Artist emblem that can't be removed from the game. This is incredibly powerful by itself, but he also gets access to an even bigger sacrifice ability with card draw to match. Sephiroth is an excellent commander to build around as he breaks the standard for engine decks by providing 2 of the 3 parts necessary to make it work. He's a sacrifice outlet and a Blood Artist. I'll do another video later about engines and why this combination is so particularly potent. It deserves its own video. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Let me walk you through the deck I built around Sephiroth Fabled Soldier. There are 2 types of creatures you tend to put in an Aristocrats deck: tokens and stuff that can recur itself. Let's kick this off by talking about Ophiomancer. With Ophiomancer, you create 4 tokens every turn cycle if you can kill off a snake before each upkeep. That can come in the form of sacrificing them, or if your opponents are stupid enough, by throwing a Death Touch blocker in their way. Because we have lots of stuff that will be dying, Avenger of the Fallen is the type of grizzly fighter we want in this deck. Good synergy with the recursion blokes we'll talk more about soon. And if I have a chance to put Grave Titan in a deck, I will. It's a fun card for you. It's very much a nightmare to run up against in a deck like this, and can give you all the tokens you need to flip Sephiroth once it's attacked one time. With Endrick Sar, it's even easier to fill your board with tokens to melt down. You just have to be careful you aren't killing him off, but I don't have any 7+ mana creatures in this deck. Meanwhile, Chittering Witch gives you 4 bodies for 4 mana if you feel like sacrificing her as well. She has the added benefit of being a sacrifice outlet herself who can potentially snipe people's value engines. If any of the parent cards in this section do die, Ogre Slumlord is there to replenish your board. Blightmound is an enchantment that makes you pest tokens that heal you when they die, but Sifter of Skulls is particularly interesting. It makes you an Eldrazi Scion creature token that can sacrifice itself, ramping you in the process. If you don't remember what a crime is, don't worry, no one else does. Geesa the Hellraiser makes 2 creature tokens whenever you commit a murder. And Jadar, Ghoulcaller of Nephalia, is a bit less maintenance. He'll just make a zombie on your end step. If you need a bit more gas for your zombie pile, Army of the Damned is a really unlucky card for your opponents to run up against. They may even have to face it twice. The most common creature in this category is by far Reassembling Skeleton. You only have to pay for its recursion, and there's no other requirements. Whereas Bloodsoaked Champion is 1 mana cheaper, but you have to have attacked in order to recur him. Forsaken Miner is even more conditional, but his recursion cost is cheaper. And Bloodghast will recur itself for free if you've got a land to drop on it. Nine Lives Familiar is a bit slower than the others, but like Ophiomancer, it's super consistent and you know when it's going to come back on the battlefield. If you need to grab something more important from your graveyard, Phyrexian Reclamation will do it. And if you need to grab everything from every graveyard, Rise of the Dark Realm will do that too. Sacrifice outlets are the mechanism of this deck. Without them, you can throw as much gas as you want on the deck. It's not gonna spark. There's hardly a more frequently used sacrifice outlet than Ashnod's Altar. It doesn't tap to sacrifice, it ramps you when it does, and it's an artifact so it's harder to remove. This is one of the most common combo pieces you'll see in Commander. However, Ashnod's Altar doesn't kill someone by itself. Yahedi can sacrifice other creatures to make himself stronger, and if someone points a gun at him, he makes himself indestructible in the process. Carrion Feeder isn't quite as impressive, but it can be a threat in its own right, and Viscera's Seer allows you to rapidly sift through cards to put the optimal card on top of your deck. If you don't have any creatures to sacrifice, these aren't much good though. Spawning Pit is a bit more self-sufficient if you've got the initial fuel to get it off the ground, and I'm a huge fan of it. The third part of this engine is the Blood Artist category. These are your payoffs. They take the deck from self-kneecapping itself and transform it into a credible threat on the board. For example, the progenitor itself, Blood Artist, is the namesake for this ability type, but there are many like it. Vengeful Blood Witch is a clone that was printed in Foundations. The big difference between these two is Blood Artist is any creature dying, but Vengeful Blood Witch is only creatures you control. But Zulaport Cutthroat is even better. It deals damage to each opponent, tripling your damage output. And at 1 mana above that is Funeral Room. If you run out of steam, Awakening Hall is there to replenish your board. Sir Conrad the Grim is the perfect card to have on your board if you do find yourself in the position to use Awakening Hall. He'll siphon your opponents when creatures leave your graveyard. While you may not gain life from his ability, life gain is a pretty big part of this deck, so it's only right to include Sanguine Bond. You can chain this together with a wide range of cards in this deck, but my favorite is one we'll talk about near the end. And while the Carnage Dominus isn't a Blood Artist itself, it does double their triggers. Notably, this means you'll only need to sacrifice 2 creatures to flip Sephiroth. Whenever Whenever I build a deck, I focus on 3 primary categories of utility to build around. Those are card draw, ramp, and removal. For example, if you find yourself in a position where you have an ample amount of tokens about to enter the battlefield, make sure you've got Ayara down first. She'll not only drain your opponents for each token and give you a sacrifice engine to boot, she draws you cards. But Skull Clamp is where your card draw really pops off. It only takes 2 or 3 triggers to completely refill your hand, and with so many 1/1 tokens in this deck, that's incredibly easy to achieve. There's also a couple instants in this deck that allow you to sack a creature and draw 2 for 1 mana. That's Village Rites and Corrupted Conviction. Deadly Dispute does the same thing for 2, netting you a treasure token for the inconvenience. You can use those instants to sacrifice a non-token creature for Grim Haruspex to also draw you a card, or use them to sacrifice any creature to draw 3 cards in total. Morbid Opportunist is great because even if you get board wiped, you'll at least get a card out of it. My personal favorite haymaker in this category is Liliana Dreadhorde General. You can slap down this Planeswalker to basically gain infinite value. She slots into this deck perfectly as a do-everything card in your toolbox. In ramp, there are your standards like Soul Ring and Arcane Signet, your cost reducers in Jet Medallion and Bantu's Monument, and your super cheap ramp with Charcoal Diamond. Dark Ritual gives you a burst of mana at instant speed. Feel free to play Sephiroth on turn 1, because why not? Pitiless Plunderer synergizes extremely well within an Aristocrats deck to basically give you infinite mana, but my favorite mono-black ramp spell is Crowded Crypt. You can let this sit on the battlefield for the entire game, constantly using it to juice your mana until you're ready to overrun the board like it's World War Z. My removal choices in this deck weren't super original. These are the standard choices you'll see in black decks, but they're good single spot removal to keep your opponents in check. In case you need something a little more drastic than single target removal, I added Mutilate, Massacre Worm, and Toxic Deluge because they can wipe most of the board. These also offer alternate win cons if you've got enough creatures to make the math check out. There's a couple random categories in this deck, so let's talk through those real quick. For protection, I have Lightning Greaves. Sephiroth is incredibly valuable in this deck, so ensuring he can stay alive is pretty important. Lightning Greaves gives him protection and haste to potentially get another trigger. As a finisher, I tend to put Exsanguinate in most black decks, but when I spoke about Sanguine Bond earlier, Exsanguinate is the piece I like alongside it most. It's basically a budget version of the Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood combo. Perhaps the coolest bit of tech in this deck, though, is Conjurer's Closet. It's here for one reason: to reset Sephiroth. While you can't remove Sephiroth's emblem, you can remove him. If Sephiroth were to die and go to the command zone, he would return to the battlefield front side up. This is also true if he leaves the battlefield, period. Conjurer's Closet blinks Sephiroth, so once you've got the emblem, you can do this multiple times to stack those emblems. It only takes 2 or 3 times for this to basically become impossible to win against. I wanted to add a few lands that weren't basics. I do love me some utility lands, but they also get pricey pretty quickly, so here are the 5 I added. Bojuka Bog is classic graveyard hate. It's effectively the only tapped land in this deck, but it's absolutely worth it. There's a chance Witch's Cottage comes in tapped, but you'd have to be super unlucky or have taken a bad mulligan. It's decent recursion if there's something stuck in your graveyard. For example, if you milled 3 cards with Takenuma and all of them are good recursion options. I love Takenuma despite it being the most expensive of these utility lands. Spymaster's Vault can draw you an insane number of cards and pump a creature into a big threat with relative ease. In my head, you should be averaging around 4 for that connive number. And my favorite utility land in a deck that wants to sacrifice its own creatures is Westvale Abbey. It can make tokens for a terrible rate and serves as a huge sack outlet. When you've activated that ability, you get Ormondal Profane Prince. You could target this with your Spymaster's Vault Connive ability. Part of the fun of including this card is simply to see if you can do it. If you wanted to build a more thematic deck with the cards from Final Fantasy, you could. Here are my 5 favorites that you could add. Speaking of utility lands, Midgar City of Mako is super thematic in the Final Fantasy universe with Sephiroth, but also in this Aristocrats deck. I think this card will be a staple in many black decks, so I'd recommend you maybe buy a couple copies now before the price jumps. The Darkness Crystal is primarily a cost reducer, but it also serves as a bit graveyard hate comboed with an ability to pour mana into later. It does a lot in mono black decks like this one. I'm a huge fan of this Vincent Valentine card, so much so that I built a deck around him. There will be lots of stuff dying throughout the game, and Vincent makes an extra threat on your board to invest in, both for you and for your opponent's removal spells. Better he eats it than Sephiroth. Xenos is basically a Massacre Worm that can also win you the game with the push of a button. I view this as a bit of a combo piece, as you can easily set it up to where he transforms into Shinryu as you kill another player. Finally, the final boss I'd look to add is Zodiarch Umbral God. He wipes half the board and can give you a huge sack outlet at the same time. I hope you enjoyed this deck. My next video will be about how to play it, but more broadly I want to talk about the Aristocrats archetype itself. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Until next time, peace.